Oh, hello everyone. I'm sure glad to be here. Is everybody there?
Yeah.
Naomi, do you have sound? All right, you're there. We're all there. Apologies for those that are just joining. A little rough start here with the technology, but we're going to catch up. And for those that are just watching the recording, you know nothing about this. So you're just enjoying. Just enjoy. Well, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Good evening if you're dialing in. How's everybody doing? And Eric, welcome.
Hi guys.
You've got the beginnings of the Ben. You've got the beginnings of the Ben thing happening.
I do. I'll do my absolute best. My absolute best to.
All right, excellent. Well, hey, I'm going to jump in and just kind of. Yeah, try harder, Eric. Come on. Yeah. But welcome to Collab Talk. This is the monthly webisode number 8 here. And my name is Christian Buckley. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for BZ. I'm located here outside of Bellevue, Washington. And Naomi introduced you. You've got new spread there as well.
I know, just a little bit. So, hi, I'm Naomi Moneypenny. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Many Worlds. And yes, I've moved to a new place, so halfway basically between Houston and Austin. So the place where the founding of the state of Texas, a place called Brenham, Texas. So in a kind of overall kind of fun place to be now. But not quite as fun probably as being in Boston.
Oh, here it's awesome. I'm Marc Anderson, and I am here just outside of Boston, sort of sneaking around the edges. And I am the founder and president of Simpraxis Consulting, where we do all kinds of interesting SharePoint-y kind of things. And Eric, thank you so much for joining us.
I scratched out Ben there, so try and welcome you in, Eric. There you are. Look at that. There's Eric. No Ben today.
My goodness. Wow.
I think that was like 2012. It was a while back.
I was so young. Well, hi everyone. Eric Riz. I am in fact not Ben Nyland, as you may have imagined. I'm the founder and CEO of Empty Cubicle here in beautiful downtown Toronto, home of the almost American League leading Toronto Blue Jays.
What does that mean, almost?
It means they're not in first.
Almost. There you go. There's a lot of almost then. Well, hey, and I want to thank you. So today we've got some official sponsors. So my company BZ, as well as Colligo, I've worked with. I think everybody here has probably used the Colligo solutions as well. So we're thankful to have sponsors for the webisode. And what we're going to cover today, we're going to jump into a few topics that I know that we have a few things to say about this. So we're going to talk about the SharePoint 2016 preview. And last time I checked, we don't have a day yet when we're going to see the preview, unless there's an email. Has anybody checked before the start of the call
I didn't
here?
Get it.
They were waiting just until we got on the webcast.
Not out yet.
Haven't seen that yet.
That's right. We're also going to talk about the 2013 Cloud Search Service activities across hybrid environments, so we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about Project GigJam. So if you have not seen the video, in fact, if you notice over on the side, there's a list of presentation resources. We've got numerous links across each of these topics. But you definitely want to go take a look at, I highly recommend the WPC demo of GigJam. And then we're going to talk about the general availability of Cortana Analytics and PowerBI and all that wonderfulness that's coming out. So with that, let's kick things off. Yes, it's true. There's going to be another version of on-prem coming out. It's happening. It's really here. So what are some thoughts about what's to be expected from the preview?
You're asking me what do the MVPs know? And I keep saying what do you know? Could you tell me? I think we're all waiting with worms on our tongues, bated breath, right?
I like that.
Yeah, so we know that they came out with the, they announced earlier than I think people had expected. I think we were expecting later this fall. What are people excited about this version? I mean, Naomi, you have some thoughts, some things that you're waiting to see?
I think what I'm most actually excited about is to see how this rollout is going to be different. And I think it's really thinking about the different solutions. So the cool thing about the architecture in 2016 is that they'll be able to roll out these solutions. And so it gives us a different way of deploying SharePoint than we might traditionally think about it. So instead of this wholesale sort of shift over to the new system, it's going to be like, oh, I can deploy this kind of portal, I can deploy, a knowledge management portal, I can deploy these different solutions at the right time for my users. And I think that's actually going to be the most exciting part of it for me. The fact that you can basically keep adding on new functionality and new experiences as they become available is actually a much easier way of putting things into the organization and maybe thinking about which solutions should be using SharePoint first and helping people to stage that. I think, it's really cool, all the changes that are happening on the back end, right? There's lots of stuff for IT pros to get excited about in SharePoint 2016. But I think from an end user perspective, it's thinking about all those different solutions that are going to roll out over the next coming months and even years. So I think that from an on-prem perspective, it's the coolest thing.
Yeah, Eric or Marc, I mean, anything that you specifically are thinking about looking at in this release?
I think Marc is subtly throwing to me.
Eric, come on, get excited! SharePoint 2016, woo!
I think Marc is not so subtly throwing to me. I think there's the biggest thing that I'm hearing from an excitement perspective is just that Microsoft is committed to another on-prem version, and people are very excited about that because it means that usually with the fact that they haven't cut the on-prem version means that there may potentially be another on-prem version, or at least it gives organizations the opportunity to move up to the next version when they're ready, of course, because only in my experience and research, there's only about 40% or 45% of organizations that are moving up from 07 or 10 or 13 up to 7 to 10 to 13, and that means that 60% of the users are still out there and they're using a previous version. So this gives people the opportunity to leapfrog up to the next generation platform or another platform in future. So people are looking at this as a strategic move that they can make when they're ready, and they'll have new technology to use when they're ready to make that switch.
I think go ahead, Marc.
How do I move my head here? How do I move my head to look at Marc? Hold on. Get this right.
It's hard. You gotta. If you're here a few times, maybe you'll get it.
I'll have
so people keep asking me, and like, what is 2016 going to look like? And I keep saying, well, log into Office 365, and it'll probably look like that, right? I think what's going to be the most significant thing in SharePoint 2016 is going to be the stuff that people actually don't see. It's going to be the admin side. Microsoft's been running this beast as a service now for 3 years at least that we can count on this platform, and they know how hard it is. So I think that the big story is going to be the back end, the admin piece, making SharePoint runnable, which we all know it is really hard to do well, with the current tools. It got better over the versions, but it never got good enough. And we're always running into all kinds of strange problems and stuff. So my hope is that the 2016 release really nails all that stuff down, gives us the dashboards and whatever it is that they've got on the back end of Office 365 that none of us have seen before, gives us that stuff so that we don't have to spend so much time making sure SharePoint's healthy.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, is the fact that, as we've been told repeatedly, but I think it's worth mentioning again, is the fact that this is the first version that is being released. I mean, obviously post Office 365 launch, but from a deployment of code perspective from Microsoft, it's the first version that they've developed, not in parallel with the cloud version, but building out and focusing on cloud first, and then saying what can we take from and what makes sense in an on-prem version. So it is very different. And I had a conversation with Bill Baer a couple of years back where we were talking about how Microsoft is learning so much about, they weren't even sure how they were going to release the bits for this version. So there's just a lot of new things to this, not just a new version of the platform. It's a new way of deploying. It's a new way of thinking of how they prioritize features and capabilities, how what they develop and architect for the cloud, also thinking about how will this work in an on-prem or in a hybrid environment. And so it certainly adds complexity to the release, but it's also very exciting. I think for everything that we've been talking about here is that it makes it much more rapid in the deployment of components of the release over time. And Microsoft, while they're committed and already talking about the next version, whatever it is, SharePoint 2019, 2020, whatever it is. But I think the reality is that we're going to see major minor versions, major minors, being released, over the next couple of years, a major capability that will be released in the cloud first, but will be released with integration, connectivity with the on-prem versions in mind. So I think we really are going into a new era where things are going to be different. I'm pretty excited about it as well.
Yeah, I think Christian.
It's cool because it's really going to be about, I think this release here that we're going to see in August is really for IT pros, right? I think it's for the IT department to get excited about, and then I think it's roll out those end user capabilities over time. And the other cool thing, of course, is some of the changes that have happened at Microsoft. Jeff Teeper is now back in the role too, so he's now back, looking at the SharePoint development track also. So I think that's kind of exciting too, to have him come back and bring some of his experiences that he had in leading the business before, and sort of being able to sort of articulate maybe a little bit of the story for the on-premises and the understanding of the on-premises customers, and how you want to go hybrid, you want to go cloud at your own pace. So I think it'll be kind of this release is all about the IT pros, and then we'll see much more capabilities for the end users as those new experiences come out. I think the continuous deployment model, I think Microsoft is already trying to do that in a way, right? By really sort of making this release like, oh, this is cool, we're going to do all these things for making it easier for you to run this in your data center based on all of our experiences now that we've had to run our own products in the cloud. But now it's really thinking about the solutions that go into the end users and how those get rolled out. Instead of, hey, here it is, fait accompli, on the first day, and here's the the new user interface and everything else. So I think it's kind of the cool thing is to see how this progression comes out, and see how we can get rid of the patching story, how we make all the back end story, and then how we roll out the solutions and capabilities and experiences to users.
I still can't get it right. Gosh. I was actually going to say something very similar. So, Christian, you were talking earlier about the fact that I'll have to grow my beard longer if I want to do my Ben impression. And while I can't do that, every time someone mentions, 2019 or 2020, my hair does get a little grayer. You see that it's starting to creep up there. So I don't know where we're all going to be at that point, but personally, I'm very excited that Jeff Teeper's back at the helm, and seeing what he was able to do with previous versions of SharePoint is to me hugely exciting to see what changes are going to come in the next generation, how the whole model of both 365 and SharePoint moves forward, and it's a huge time for the SharePoint world.
I've heard some interesting sort of backcurrent conversations about how, with Teeper coming back, Teeper, I never know how to say his name. They really are trying to refocus the team on making SharePoint great again. And all of us who've been doing SharePoint forever think it's pretty cool, but obviously it has its foibles. I think that there's going to be a refocusing, and I think this 2016 release will be a, we should watch what's happening as some indicators of where they want to go next. We're all trying to read tea leaves all the time, and people tune in to hear what our tea leaf reading says. We're often wrong, but I think this 2016 release will give us some signs about where things are going.
Well, I think part of why we're wrong, though, Mark, is because when we point things out, Microsoft goes in and then fixes or changes things. So what's up with that?
It's an amazing thing.
I think that's yeah. But that's actually, that's kind of joking about it, but like the point I want to make is that one thing that is really different, and that I'm sure Teeper is going to capitalize on, is that Microsoft has gotten much better at listening and providing multiple locations where you can go and discuss and provide feedback. Definite specific channels for providing feedbacks when you're running into issues, or you see functionality that's happening out either that's been built by companies, by customers, or through the partner ecosystem. And so it's important, and I'm just a huge advocate for this, that is, it's one thing to sit here and complain because something doesn't work the way that you want it. It's another thing to provide constructive feedback back to Microsoft so they can do something about it. And so it's just critical that we continue to provide that level of feedback. I'm just assuming that somebody at Microsoft is sitting here listening to everything we say in this CollabTalk event, and they're transcribing it and sending that to executives, because I'm not going to do anything but beyond just talking.
That's right. And we'll now take the opportunity. We can see the participant list here, so we will now take the opportunity for each of you to identify yourself. We look forward to you guys going ahead and explaining who you are and what you do.
I think Ernie's the Microsoft.
Well, I'm going to move us to. There you go. Oh, they're always sitting and listening. I'm going to jump ahead to topic number 2. I know I had a poll. I'm going to skip by the poll of what version people are on. Sorry, Lyman, we're skipping past that. Let's jump in and talk about the second one, about search across hybrid environments, the new cloud search service application. And I don't know, and Naomi, have you done any research? Have started to investigate this?
Yeah,
we were talking about this a month ago.
So yeah, and I think that's what's kind of the cool thing, is looking at how we'll be able to share some of that content from an indexing perspective. I haven't looked very deeply into it. I know that there are obviously some 6 kinds of information that we'll be able to synchronize up there. So it'll be sort of the title of the document, the author of the document, created date, those kinds of things. So there's those kind of information, that meta information, that we'll be able to basically send up to the cloud to have it processed. And that will help you to hybridize your environment, in that those search results will be available in the Office 365 portal. It'll also obviously be used by Office Graph as a source of signals. And then you'll be able to blend that in with any components that you might be running in the cloud already. So if, for example, you're using Yammer, you're going to see the Delve search results will include connections like web links that people have shared in Yammer and conversations. And then you'll also see some of the documents that you have on premises in your SharePoint environment, because that index will be shared up to the cloud. And so it's not the idea that the documents themselves are obviously still living on your on-premises environment. It's just the index service that's being shared up, and that will be synchronizing on a regular basis. So I'm pretty excited that that we can bring some of this new capability that we might have thought was only going to be in 2016. Although it was really exciting when it was announced that it was going to be on-prem for 2013 as well. So I think that gives you a graceful way to even synchronize your search index, which is usually the biggest obstacle perhaps of moving to the cloud the way you want it. So I think it's really cool stuff. So Eric, you want to chat about what your experiences with the cloud search service?
I'm actually going to defer to Mark on this one.
Okay.
He was so kind. He was so kind. I think it's only correct if I turn my head a certain way and point.
you're taking a page from Ben, who reveres me as a mentor and a real leader in the community. Yeah. I think that the interesting thing is all of that stuff that Naomi just said. I mean, to an end user means I'm going to be able to find stuff better, and that's actually what matters, right? I mean, we tend to focus on the technology side of it, and I'm not dissing you at all. But I think what we'll see is that there will be subtle differences in the search results that people are getting on those SharePoint and Office 365 kind of screens, and they will be able to find their content better. It doesn't mean that there's going to be magic. We still have to do the right work with information architecture and metadata and all the other stuff that we've always had to do. Yeah, exactly, Christian. So all that this is really doing is solving that technical disconnect, but we still have the logical work that we have to do, and we're just going to be able to present that data, those search results, in a much cleaner, more sort of prepackaged way for users. I always believe that the best search is the one we don't have to do because our information architecture is so good. In which case, none of this technology matters so much, right? But that's the
plus it'll all be plus it'll all be driven by Cortana. We'll just it's basically I plan to set up my household all via Cortana and the Clapper, and that's.
I say, hey Cortana, and as you can see, nothing happens. So she's
well, Marc,
hello, Cortana. Nothing. She has a little bit of a sneer. She writes it up.
Marc, I
do have a friend who calls her Contrera instead of Cortana, which I kind of like. So it says the opposite of what she does.
Go for it, Eric.
Marc, I'm going to one-up you on that because as much as we love Cortana here on our mobile devices, Cortana in Windows 10 has not been released yet. So you talk and she does nothing. I talk, she can't even hear me. So that's the issue we're having up here in Canada right now. But apparently Cortana will be released in the coming months.
Oh, in Canada.
Within the Windows 10 world.
Canada. Probably the location services or something.
I live in this other country where it's supposed to talk to me, and it doesn't, so I'm not sure what's going on.
Mine talks to me too much, I think. But anyway,
I kind of got sidetracked slightly. Hey, there's an appropriate use of the CollabTalk hand signal. But I did want to point, again, there are a couple of resources that are over on, within the presentation resources that point you to articles. In fact, there were two great presentations given at Ignite that walk through in detail on the this new search service application. And so if you go take a look, like I'm looking at the one that's out, so there was the presentation. So the title is, it's out on the SharePoint Escalation Services team blog. The all-new cloud search service application coming to SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 2016. But should also point out that you can still access this if you still have 2010 environments and want to access Office 365 or 2013 content. That again, it can be accessed that Azure-based shared index the same way. So it is. As I've talked with organizations over the last couple of years that we're starting to think about moving to the cloud, and this goes back. I don't want to bring up this sore topic of the all-in on the cloud versus the reality of businesses of that we're going to slowly move to the cloud, and we I think the community forced Microsoft's hand to think more in depth about hybrid. But things are back on track now, so we'll ignore that little interlude there the last 3-4 years. But it's the fact that organizations were, one of the struggles was in supporting a hybrid environment was having an integrated search experience. And not wanting to move forward because they were either not able to have a full search across all of their assets across these different environments, or that it wasn't a blended or integrated, federated search result. It was like a side-by-side search result, which was not acceptable. So by having this via Azure, accessible through any version of SharePoint that the vast majority of organizations are using. If you're using 2007 or earlier, what's going on there? But I don't know. You could probably rig something to work.
There are people happy with
2010 on the back end, right? Maybe
with 2007.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, and Mark, I completely agree. That's, and if you are productive and getting done what
You had to get back to that poll, didn't you?
The good old days. Tahoe above.
Oh, come on, put the poll. Let's see if anybody's really. Let's see if he's still awake. Come on. No, not that one. Not that one. The other. We're all answering too. I'm going to answer for me and my client. That wasn't, but I did run into somebody at a conference in the last 6 months who was, and they weren't kidding. Sometimes these things sit in a corner somewhere, and chug it away, and they work, and nobody really sees a reason to change it. Well, and Victor raises a point, though. There is a security and supportability question there. Again, all part of governance, though, right? If you've got it locked in a corner somewhere and that stuff doesn't matter to you and you're happy, you can stay on that stuff and chug away. Let's not forget to show everybody the exciting results from the first poll as well.
Ooh.
No one, that was not me. That was not me. I still think there were people out there.
I'm always excited about anything that has significant procedural impact to an organization, and that's. I knew I'd generate a laugh from somebody. I just wasn't sure who it was going to be. So thank you very much. Right on to you. Well,
just because.
As long as it's geared towards improvement, there may be some fact there. I think that it's going to have a big impact, and I think that it could play largely into SharePoint and O365, and I think that it's going to be a very good thing. But like most things that Microsoft releases, it's going to take a significant amount of human manual effort in order to set the strategies and align resources and get objectives together that people are going to be able to execute on.
Yeah, it does feel sometimes like Microsoft. Sometimes, sometimes it feels like Microsoft is throwing handfuls of partially boiled pasta at the fridge just to see which shapes stick the best, right? This does seem to be a bit of an overlay to some of the things that they've done in other spaces. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this gets the juice that some other things we thought would get the juice and maybe have not. Victor points out Project Oslo and a lot of other, there's some other things I can think of that may or may not have ever seen the light of day. So I was just looking on the Project GigJam site. We have a blog post on the 13th of July. That's the one and only post so far. So maybe they're all on vacation, but something might happen there, and let's keep an eye on it.
I think what I thought
Now,
was
Naomi,
exciting about GigJam,
sorry,
what I thought was exciting about GigJam was the fact that we can take data from any source, right? And I think that for me was like the idea that we're really trying to take the data sources regardless of what platform it's in, and we're able to give that to the user to manipulate and to work on the project in order to solve the task, right? So, I know Eric talked a little bit about the sort of procedural differences before, but I see the GigJam as really that linchpin, or at least an application that looks like something like GigJam, is really helping you to resolve the process bottlenecks, right? So most of the cost in the organization is about resolving that process bottleneck. And so GigJam was a way of, hey, I found an exception to this process. How can I quickly get the people I need together? But then how can I quickly pull all the data that I need from all the disparate places in order to solve that problem, right? And that's, I think, is really exciting. I think it's cool to see that from an end user perspective, that, hey, there's this different interface and I can pull this data together and I can work with my colleagues to resolve the problem. And so realizing it's outside of a specific system, it's really pulling these things together, and you're creating an application on the fly, which is kind of amazing, right? It's not just I have to take this prepackaged application. I can really pull the data together, create my own workload around it, and then have an application that I'm developing essentially as an end user. I'm just not aware of it. So for me, I thought that was the exciting part of GigJam. So regardless of whether it's this GigJam or there's some other technology, the idea of this experience where we come together for collaboration, it's focused on a very specific task, resolving that bottleneck, and then getting all the data that we need very quickly in order to do it. So that for me was the most exciting part. And I thought it was cool. I'd like to see stuff that maybe Microsoft is throwing up against the wall and seeing, what sticks. But I like the idea of it, and I like that they were able to share something that's still very early and still in development, and see what the reaction is to it. I think it's a great way to do testing with users and understand what could be important for them. I think it's good to have it as a stretch vision, right? I think maybe showing us a project with still, formulation. So showing us GigJam maybe is a way to help us stretch our vision about how experiences could look. And so like that, it's like showing us a surface or something like when they were first coming out, right? Here's this new experience that you could have, and we'll expect other people maybe to come up with applications that are similar, but it's sort of stimulating that thought process of this is how things should work, right? The data that should come to the employees should work together and resolve that data. They shouldn't care what system it's in. They should be able to formulate the queries that they need, and they should be able to do it across all of the knowledge bases in the company. But articulating that and actually showing it, even if you think it's a contrived scenario, I think it's a really good thing to do that, because it gives people that experience of, yeah, this is how things could work differently in my company, right? I could have a process organization, I could have a way of dealing with exceptions to those processes, and have a way of collaborating and bringing that data together. And it takes collaboration from this lofty thing and then do it. No, go ahead. I saw it more as exception processing, so at least it helps you with that part of it. And then if you think about how the task that you're doing every day, but I saw the human intervention was only necessary for exception processing, which is very costly to companies. So that was my perspective on it. Really? I can't hear you.
Eric, you can't.
We lost you.
That was the best thing Eric ever said. Oh man, bummer. So Josh and I were having an interesting little back and forth in the chat window about, how do you sort of take this consumer model and make it available to organizations that don't want to change. They don't want anyone to touch anything unless it's fully baked, but then it won't get baked unless you touch it. So, GigJam might fall into that category, right? Not enough people sort of put their fingers on it and use it and make their organizations change a little bit by the fact of using it, then it may not go anywhere. And I know we're not talking about GigJam specifically there, but it's an interesting point. We see that it's part of the pasta on the refrigerator problem.
Great. The question is how much do does it cost you in your organization to process an exception and get the data together, right? That's the cost of change for your organization. So if you want your process to go faster, you want to be a more agile company, you'll have to think about what's the cost consideration for processing versus, how can I quickly resolve this and do it in a more agile way. So it's always that tension, right, from a business decisioning perspective.
I'm hoping that we're getting close to the time where this barrier between IT trying to stop people from using things and people trying to get their work done just disappears. I'm really tired of it. I've been in the middle of it for years and years and years. And maybe these GigJam things and things like Delve and Office 365 groups and all these other things that are sort of looser mechanisms where people can just sort of do what they need to do to get the work done, are going to make the difference. I think it's having an impact already. Right?
Say too much about it, but I think what the coolest thing about Cortana Analytics, I think, is Microsoft bringing all of these capabilities together. And so if you had played before, if you have some dim awareness even of things like the Azure Machine Learning service, if you played around with the big data services, if you played around with the Azure HD Insight, or Stream Insight, Stream Analytics, which is really, about getting the data coming in through the pipes, basically, and being able to process it as a pre-filter. So the great thing about Cortana Analytics is bringing all of this stuff together, as well as the Power BI capabilities. So I think that's the first thing that people need to understand, is that this Cortana Analytics is basically rebranding some of the elements that were already the services that you might have experimented with or might have heard about before, but bringing them together under one suite, and then basically adding on top of it the power of Cortana in terms of things like natural language processing, being able to do queries in natural language, which really helps you from an end user perspective. So I think it's really about trying to take away some of the barriers that we have to processing either large amounts of data or being able to actually make the data that we have queryable and give us the insights that we're looking for. So there's a lot of different models also available as part of Cortana Analytics. So there's some forecasting models, some basic recommendations type of technology. There's also some new services like the data lake that you can have with Azure. So if you have, big data, you can help to process that. You can do the democratization of that processing through using some capabilities maybe around Power BI. You can also use HD Insight, which is a product I've used a few times, which I love, for being able to extract the data if you have it in Hadoop. But you can also then use, put it as forecasting models and other things that other people in your organization may be able to access. So putting all of these things together, I think, is incredible. So I'm very excited about the idea of Cortana Analytics and the suite itself. So obviously Power BI, has its own track as well as being part of this analytics suite. And so Power BI has been on its GA track and is now available, so you guys should always check that out. So if you haven't played around with it, Power BI is amazing for doing all kinds of visualizations, as well as just being able to process some of the data. Even if you have still Excel 2010, you can still access some of the capabilities of Power BI. And if you're in Office 365, you should have have that available in your app launcher now, because a whole bunch of people get basically free licenses to it, which is really cool. It's being part of Office 365, as well as being able to then, if you're using Excel 2013, then you can have those add-ins whether you're in Office 365 or not too. So I think it's, the exciting thing is looking at how we get the insights from data and trying to reduce the time from here's the pure data to having actionable insights. So Cortana Analytics is really, I think it's a great move to put all of these services together. I think it was getting quite hard to understand, like there was this whole range of services, and when do I need big data, when do I need machine learning, when do I use HD Insight?
I still worry about. I was going to say I still worry about some of these data fiefdoms that we have. I think a lot of these things demo really well because in the demo you have control of all the data. When you look across organizations, it's often not the tool that matters. It's the fact that you can't get to that data. So we still have that fundamental problem. The Power BI stuff is beautiful if you can get your fingers in there. I'm using my hands here, so that you can actually do those beautiful things. I again hope that the fact that the tools exist may start to break down some of that fiefdom idea. But I think that's a big reason why people build these ridiculous spreadsheets is that they can then own the data. And they can keep it to themselves and no one can take it away from them or change it. So as we're seeing people look at these tools, I'm hoping they're thinking, ooh, if we only could have these discussions about how to get this data from finance and that data from marketing and that data from manufacturing or whoever it is, so that they can make this stuff work, will actually be an interesting conversation to have. But a quiet one. Next. Thanks, everybody.